Hi, I'm Lou Scott, and this is the Geppetto Room, where you don't have to be creative to be creative. You just have to be you. Because here we're going to explore and explain techniques, methodologies that'll make it easy for you, easier to create, to innovate, to transform your ideas into practical solutions that Vermont needs, to enrich the way you live, the way you work, the way you play in our state. Now, recently, I read an article in Scientific American, and the name of the article, the title of the article was How Matter Becomes Mind. And the researchers in Scientific American, they were scientists, were talking about what parts of the brain, especially the right hemisphere, what makes our personality, what makes our experiences count, how do we act? Actually, simply, what is the mind? What parts of the brain make up who we are, our mind? Now, I was struck by two things reading that article. The first one was that the brain has so much potential that we don't really get. We can get it, we don't reach it, okay? We have so much potential to help us make better ideas, to create better concepts. The second thing that I was impressed with is that that we can reach those parts of the brain. We can reach the potential of the brain. Some of the techniques that we've been talking about for the last 12 months will help, and especially they impact on the neurons in the right brain, in the right hemisphere of the brain, and I will talk about that. Now, the authors covered a lot of areas that are not relevant to our problem. Now, what is our problem in Vermont? Well, we have a big one. We have an infrastructure problem. We have our youth leaving. We're getting older, which is a demographic problem. We have our schools closing. There's not enough business. If we don't solve the problems that we have, we are facing, for the next 20 years or so, a very dire economic future. What we have to do is solve our problems with new ideas, not old ideas. Now, as I said, the authors covered a lot of areas that were not relevant to our problem. However, there are three things I'd like to share with you that I think are relevant, I found very interesting, and relevant to our problem. The first thing was that the authors used a metaphor of an orchestra. They said, when you add instruments and accompaniment to an orchestra, what you're doing is you're making it fuller. You're making it more robust. You're making it better to sound. You're giving it more variety. The same for the brain. When you add data to the brain now, the data doesn't have to be related to a particular problem. No, it just has data, information that the brain, especially the right hemisphere of the brain, can mix and match and assimilate and make up new ideas and new creative ideas. I thought that was interesting. The second thing they said that I want to share with you is that 50% of the brain is natural, meaning we're born with it. The cliche is that we're wired a certain way. It gives us a certain personality. There are certain potentials and propensities that we have. However, more importantly, 50% of the brain is malleable. 50% of the brain is nurtured. It depends on our education, our readership, our experiences, where we live, and so forth. So the brain is malleable, which means that we can change it. We can use these techniques to create better ideas, transformative ideas, which we need. Now, the third thing I'd like to share with you, which I found exceedingly interesting, and I hope you do too, was just the following. The right hemisphere is known to have, that's where the creativity is. That's where we create ideas, new things happen. We take old concepts and we create new ideas. The left hemisphere is more analytical, more rational. Now, why? These researchers pursued that, and let me tell you why. The right brain is more creative because the neurons, the billions of neurons in our right hemisphere are longer. Now, let me explain that. Picture yourself walking down a hallway, a long, long hallway, and you're with all these neurons. And on the way down, on the way at the end of the hallway, you see a vague idea. You don't have an idea, a vague idea. And as you walk down this hallway, you're walking along, you're gaining information. There's all kinds of props and data and information that you're assimilating and rejecting and putting together. And by the time you reach the end of the hallway, there's an idea that's very clear. And that idea is creative because you use all that information, that long hallway. As opposed to the left hemisphere, where the neurons are shorter. When you get in, you're walking that same hallway, only it's short, and you can pretty clearly see that your idea. Now, because it's that, and you don't have time to spend creating, what happens is you have a tendency, using your left brain, more analytical, to use ideas you used before. You're in your comfort zone. You used it before, you'll use it again. That's the ideas we can't afford in our state. I thought that was interesting, the idea of size of neurons. Now, with that said, let's get to my dioramas. You know how it works. I'll tell you a story. What inspired me to do this particular diorama? Sometimes I'll talk about why I did it, when I approached it, and so forth, what it depicts. While I'm telling you that story, what I'm doing is I'm stimulating neurons in your brain, in your right hemisphere, because I'm talking about a creative execution. And so you can use these neurons in the future to make better decisions. At one point in time, I'll say, this is the Geppetto moment. And I'll talk about a specific technique, an activity, not directly related to the diorama, not necessarily, but something you can put in your toolbox to make better decisions. That's how it works. Let's go to the first one. Now, the first piece I call trees. Trees are the lungs of the brain. Now, let me explain something about what you're looking at. When I was doing the piece, I had to come up with an idea for the lungs. I'm not good at clay, so I couldn't sculpture them. So what I did is I went to the store and I bought 2 balloons, 2 textured balloons, and I blew them up, and I attached them to the tree in a piece, as you see. And I felt, well, when the air comes out, they'll be flat and they'll look like lungs. However, the air never came out. So they don't necessarily look like lungs. They look like maybe another anatomical part of a human being, but they're lungs. Now, with that said, let me get to the more important parts of it. Trees are very important to us. Countries around the world are planting millions and millions of trees every year. Why? Trees do several things. Obviously, they clean the air of CO2. That's why the countries are doing what they're doing. They create oxygen, but they do even more than that. Trees will enrich your immune system, make you stronger, make you healthier. Trees will actually eliminate, not infections so much, but inflammations in your body. Now, inflammation, remember this, inflammation is a precursor of many major diseases that can kill you, okay? Trees also give off a chemical, while they're doing all this, that actually neutralizes hormones like adrenaline that make you excited. Trees relax you. They put you in a kind of meditative state, and not only that, they're making you healthy. We need trees. Remember that when the next time you cut one down. Now, what is the Geppetto moment? The Geppetto moment is simply walk among trees, but walk this way. This is the technique. Walk very slowly. Be conscious of your feet hitting the ground, that's all. Keep on the ground. Breathe from your stomach. Let your stomach expand, not your lungs. Breathe from your stomach through your nose. Through your nose, you're breathing. And you're expanding your stomach, and you hold that breath, and then let it out slowly through your mouth. You'll find yourself getting more relaxed, more intuitive, and more creative. And it's a great time to think about problems that you might have or the state might have. That's a technique that you should use. We live in a state that has 80% forests. Take advantage of it. Not only will you have better creative ideas, but you'll be healthier, live longer. Let's go to the second one. The second diorama I call a rose by any other name. There are about 15 species of big cats. Most of them are on the verge of extinction, including the jaguar, which is part of the leopard family. Now, they're interesting. The way you tell a jaguar from the rest of the leopards, within its spot is a design. Within the spot is a design that resembles a rose. In fact, they call it a rosette. And that's one of the reasons why this particular animal is poached so greatly more, even more than some of the other tigers. Why? Isn't it a shame? Isn't it a shame when you think about the idea that this animal is killed because he's beautiful? Isn't that a shame? Because he's beautiful. We don't have the right as human beings to help extinguish, make extinct any species. Science tells us that when a species becomes extinct, what happens? It's like burning a library. You burn down the knowledge. You burn down the information. I mean, look at a leopard. The leopard is, for its size, is amazingly strong. Well, why is it? We can find out stuff. He has a locking jaw. Maybe there's an engineering mechanism we could learn. He's strong. He can jump into the water, actually attack an alligator, drag the alligator up 200-300 pounds into a tree. Let's find that out. Let's find that out. And that goes for any species that we have. Now, what's the Geppetto moment? This may sound a little strange, but it really works. The Geppetto moment is classical music. Let me explain. When you listen to classical music, you're listening to creativity, and it has a tendency to ignite neurons in your right brain, okay, where the creativity is. Listen to it. Now, listen to it in this way. You may not have to like it, but listen to classical music in this way. Try to picture the sound. If you're hearing sound, you're hearing melodies, you're hearing accompaniments and chords, try this. What images come into your brain? What images come into your brain? Now you're participating in the creative process. You're stimulating neurons in your right brain, in your right hemisphere, that will help you make better decisions. Do it. Now, there's one caveat. At least for me, there's a caveat. Do not listen to classical music. I know I can't while I'm driving in a car, because there's a tendency to go to sleep. Be careful about that. But use the technique. Let's go to the third diorama. I was inspired to do the third diorama when I read an article about a one-woman show called The Constitution. I call this piece The Constitution. And what she was talking about was, in the 18th century, at the time of the Constitution, women had no rights. There were no equality at all. Interesting enough is that the Constitution itself didn't contain rights. It was written by white Anglo-Saxon men complaining about what the crown was doing to the colonies. Had no rights. The rights came in an amendment 13 years later. That was the Bill of Rights. At that point, obviously, again, women had no rights. No rights at all. There were rights strictly for the men, okay? Not only women, slaves, and so forth. And she talks about women. Think about this. The women at the time were encouraged not to be educated. What a shame. Her job was to manage the household, create the household, cook, tend to the cows, tend to the chickens, make cheese and butter. They actually encouraged her. That was the extent of her contribution. Furthermore, if she was married, she could not sign a contract. She could not keep her own wages. And she could not, she was a chattel. I try to depict it. She was like a dog or a cat or she was owned by something. Some of that inequality we actually still sustain today. Guys, especially guys, let's stop it. They have too much to contribute. But that's how I got the piece, and that was the kind of, what I would recommend also is that you should find some more information, get some information concerning the Constitution. Because when you do, it's interesting how the nuances that you're going to learn that's going to help us in today. Now, what's the Geppetto moment? Again, this is a strange one, but it works. When you're watching television commercials, which are very expensive, which are done by some of the most creative people in the United States, if not in the world, in 1 minute, they have to be able to persuade you to purchase or be interested in a particular product. Now, when you watch it, Everything that's done there is a creative thing. Every scenery, all the words, all the props, even the models that they use to project the actors are made for a purpose, a creative purpose, to drive towards a cell. Look at that and try to figure out as you're looking, try to figure out what are they meant by that word? Why is that prop there? Why is that model being you? Why is she dressed in a certain way? Okay? When you do that, you're becoming part of a creative process. You're going to be generating neurons in your right hemisphere where the creativity is. And you're going to help use those neurons when you make decisions. That's a good, add that to your toolbox. Sounds strange, but it works. Now at this point, I'd like to address something, talk about something that's being done right now throughout Vermont. Throughout Vermont, every town, state, including Rutland and so forth, is trying to incite people to come, to live, because we have a demographic problem. We're getting old. Our young people are leaving. Everybody has doing some efforts. Now not Vermont, but Rutland has a theme that I like. It says, live the life you were meant to live. And I find that very interesting. Live the life you were meant to live. It makes some sense. It's a good positioning line. However, what they do is they in the graphics, to support that information, support the copy, both online and offline, what they do is they show pictures of hiking, biking, skiing, running, jumping. To me, that's not the reason why we're meant to live. It's a nice benefit living in a state, but that's not what we want as a life meant to live. Actually, in my opinion, those kind of graphics and those kind of words actually invite people to visit Vermont. Visit. And I think a proof of that is that in the uptick that recently in second houses, in seasonal houses. Seasonal. Nobody's coming to live here. People are coming to visit, enjoy us. We need them to come and live here. Now, what I did, I knew the people, with that said, I knew the people who were writing this commercial, were doing these commercials. And I wrote them this letter, and I want you to share I want to share it with you and see what you think. And if you think anything, write me, send me an email. Let's talk about it, because I think it's very important. We have to get people to come into our state. They have to be. Otherwise, we have bad futures economically. Let me read what I wrote to them. What is a life that you were meant to live? What is a life you were meant to live? The answer in general lies in the psyche of human behavior, encapsulated years ago by Maslow psychologists. What is it? We humans seek security, safety, companionship, recognition, a value purpose, health, a spiritual connection, and an uncumbent path to same. Don't we? That's what we want. Isn't that what we life are meant to live? Now, Vermont needs to project these emotional needs in a unique way. To me, Vermont possesses all of these attributes because it offers, and I put in this word, freedom. Because, why? Because it's small enough for one to make a difference and large enough to make it worthwhile. Because its history of independent thinking supports ideals. Because of the beliefs of liberal platform, because its environmental attention is statewide, because its business strategy is based on a firm cultural belief in cooperation with customer fairness and centricity, customer first. Because its God-given outdoors demands belief in a spirit of an Eden, wherein lies choice of a tree that bears knowledge, not doctrine. We have free thinkers here. Free, you're free to pursue anything. The above emotional benefits can be captured in a present positioning. I believe that. We need to understand that success lies inside the mind, not outside on a slope or a trail or a path. I'd be interested in what you think about that. We have to solve this problem. Now, today we have a special guest that I'd like to introduce. Her name is Leslie Dunges. She's the co-owner of of Vermont Sport and Fitness, but she's also a nutritionist, and she's going to spend some time with us talking about, I think, brain food, or how the brain is made vigorous, or made more creative by food and diet. Let's welcome right now Leslie Dunges. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Lou.
Welcome to the Geppetto Room.
Thank you.
I mentioned before you came that you are co-owner of the Vermont Sport and Fitness.
Yes.
More importantly for our show, you're a nutritionist. Now, where did you do your education?
I went to the University of Vermont in Burlington. I studied nutrition and food science, which is what I received my bachelor's degree in.
Nutrition and what?
Food science.
Food science?
Yes. Yeah.
And
so that's what I received my bachelor's degree in. Oftentimes people go on to get their master's degree to do registered dietitian. There's different avenues you can go. That's kind of one of the nice things about the field of nutrition is there's so many different areas that you can focus on.
What always fascinated me, what does a dietitian study? Not cooking. What is it? Is it science-based?
All of nutrition is science-based.
Tell me about it.
Dietitians typically will go more a clinical route. I chose to do more on the consulting end and then working with clients one-on-one within my business particularly.
But tell me about the
in terms of studying, we do, chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, we do advanced nutrition, anything that deals with how the body metabolizes nutrition, but you need a baseline. So a lot of science courses, a lot of labs, things
So
like
how the body metabolizes, what food does to, do you study food ingredients in terms of what it does to the bodies?
We study the science behind it, so we break it down to mostly the molecular level in those particular courses, and then study that.
The molecular level of food, and how it goes, how it's attracted or how it's absorbed by the body?
Exactly.
Okay, let me ask you, is there such a thing, and it may not be, it's a kind of dumb question, is there such a thing as brain food?
I think that, everything to a degree is brain food because everything that you eat, you metabolize in some way. Your brain needs glucose to function, and your brain needs the right nutrients to function. So there are foods that are better for your brain than other foods.
What are those foods?
Anything that's high in nutrients, blueberries, nuts, seeds, omega-3 fatty acids, anything that has vitamin K, folate.
All the things that are on good diets.
Exactly.
And those are the things that actually get absorbed by the brain or molecular level, or?
Yeah, they affect, our hormones. If you eat a lunch that's full of carbohydrates, right? You eat a big chunk of bread on something like that, your body's going to break that down, your sugar levels are going to spike, and then they're going to drop, and then you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel low energy, and that affects your job and how you're performing. So then you think, okay, well maybe I'll just eat a burger or a piece of steak or something. Again, something high in saturated fat. It's going to take your body a while to break that down, and when your digestive system's working hard, you're not getting that oxygen to your brain, it restricts that blood flow, and then you feel groggy.
Say that again. The idea that you're not getting not oxygen.
So when your body's working hard to digest something, like meats or something that's really high in saturated fat, you're not getting that blood flow and that oxygen to your brain, and that can make you feel really groggy. So it's really important, especially at certain times of the day, to eat the right foods. If you're talking at work, to increase your productivity, your creativity, your alertness, your memory, all those things.
Your productivity and your creativity. So if I was to sit down and start thinking about brain mapping an idea, I'm thinking about an idea, what kind of food should I eat?
I would, again, go back to the nuts and seeds, blueberries, anything that's not going to spike your blood sugar and then have it crash down, because the second that you do that, you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel irritable. Obviously, we always recommend staying away from sugar, sodas, things like that. Sugar can really wreak havoc in excess on your body and particularly your brain.
And that's exactly what most people do. They kind of stimulate themselves with sugar, but
exactly.
Too much sugar in the brain actually takes away from the creativity.
Absolutely, it can make you anxious. Excess sugar has been linked to anxiety, depression, cognitive distress, things like that. So yeah,
With
absolutely.
all those personality disorders, quote, quote, disorders, you're
Yeah.
not going to be creative.
Exactly, exactly. You need to stay balanced. You need to keep your blood sugar levels balanced throughout the day, so that you're not just going up and down, up and down, up and down, because that can make you irritable. It can wreak havoc on your body and your hormones, and you're just not yourself. You're just
And
not
that's what really
regulated.
happens. You're going up and down.
Yeah, yeah. If you're not keeping things stable, that's exactly what's going to happen. Yeah.
That's fascinating. What people usually do to be creative, sitting down, drinking their sodas and so forth, is actually fighting against their creativity.
Absolutely.
Any final words?
No, I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. And,
Well, thanks for all the
great
information.
questions.
Hopefully I
Yeah.
can have you again, because there's probably more to this.
I could talk all day about.
All day. Give me one more gem. We have time. Give me one more gem.
Well, now you got me on the spot.
No, you got another.
Stay balanced. I think that people think that they need to cut carbs or cut this or cut that to reach their goals. And I think just keeping a balanced diet, balancing your fat, protein, fiber, greens, loading yourself with nutrients each day is just going to give you the best possible chance to be productive, to be happy, be your best
And
self.
eating lots of nuts when you're doing creative work, or
Say that again?
eating lots of nuts and no sodas.
No soda, yeah, nuts, seeds, anything, berries, greens, lots of greens, protein, fat, fiber, and greens. Get those in your day. You have a good day.
Thank you very much for sharing all
Yes,
that
thank you so
information.
much.
You're on this brain show, and I appreciate. I think I'm going to have you back and talk about some other specific things about diet and so forth.
Anytime.
That's it for today. But let me just end with this kind of thing. First of all, I want to wish everybody Happy New Year. I hope I've helped over the past year, and all the different techniques. I hope you're using those techniques. And if you have ideas about those techniques, do me a favor. Come on the show. Let me interview, or send them to me. And if you don't want to send them to me, send them to your legislators, because we have to start thinking more creatively, more transformatively to solve our problems. With that, this is the Geppetto Room. I'm Lou Scott. Until next time, thank you.